So welcome Marianne TeBeau to the podcast.
Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I must say thank you very much for doing this because it is a little bit different compared to my other guests. It's
Hmm.
but this is probably one that's really important for me, and I'm sure a lot of other Van Halen fans as well really appreciate you being on the podcast today. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to tell my little story.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, so you were the carer for Eddie Van Halen back in 2018. Is that right? For 2 months?
Yeah, yep. It was about 3 months from like early September through mid November 2018.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
18. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, how did you get that job?
I was lucky. So I decided I've been a nurse for 35 years and have worked locally in Michigan, and decided that about a year before that, I decided to go into travel nursing, which you can pretty much choose your location and sign a contract for 13 to 16 weeks and work for a hospital. So I had decided to do travel nursing a couple years prior to that, and I worked in a couple different states, South Carolina and Alaska, and I decided to take an assignment in Los Angeles, California, because my oldest son lived there at the time. So I decided to sign the contract, and I worked for a hospital in Burbank called Providence Hospital. And my field of expertise is home health. So I didn't work in the hospital, but I was a nurse that went out into the community and saw patients throughout the day. So I had anywhere between 5 and 6 patients, and I would travel around in the Los Angeles Burbank area and take care of various different patients. So I was working for Providence Hospital, and I actually lived with my son, who lived literally in the heart of Hollywood. He was pretty much about a block off Hollywood Boulevard. He worked in downtown Los Angeles, so I lived with him. I started working there in the summer of 2018 and loved it so much, especially the weather. It was gorgeous. So I extended my contract. And it was a weekend that I was expected to work. So we rotated, like one every 4 weekends, I would pick up and work both Saturday and Sunday. And I never really knew who I was going to see, because as a contract nurse, I was filling in for the nurses. Most of them were case managers and had regular patients, but I would fill in if somebody was off or if somebody was on vacation. And so on that Saturday, I was getting ready for work, and I opened my laptop up to see who I was going to go travel to. And the code for somebody in more of a higher security, I guess, system, like a movie star or somebody that's pretty prominent, your laptop would open and you would see the words "break the glass."
Okay.
So they always warned us, if that happens, be prepared, because you're going to see it's going to be somebody famous. Well, that Saturday morning, I opened my laptop up and it said "break the glass." And that just meant that I had a higher security code to get into the system. Anyway, when I did what I needed to do, I opened up the laptop, and one of my patients that day was Edward Ludwig Van Halen. And I pretty much about fell over, because I thought, this cannot be true. This cannot be real. I am not going to see Eddie Van Halen. And I started like Googling, what is Eddie Van Halen's middle name? Sure enough, it matched. And then all of a sudden, as I got into the system, it really was Eddie Van Halen. So that's how I got the assignment. It was very random. They just assigned him to me because I was working that weekend. It just so happened that that was the day that he needed to begin home care, and I was the lucky nurse. And so yeah, that's crazy. That's how I got the assignment.
That's amazing. And had you,
Hmm.
I mean, I guess you would have known about Van Halen prior to that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the 80s and listened to Eddie Van Halen a lot in the
Yeah.
80s. So yeah, I love the band, love the music, and it was just a really popular band at the time. And, just, yeah, huge Van Halen fan. Never in a million years did I ever think that I was going to actually be in his home
Mm.
caring for him. Um, but yeah, it happened. And I had him as a patient for about 3 months until I was done doing what I needed to do. And it was truly probably one of the most iconic experiences of my career. I had other famous people in the Hollywood area, but nobody as big as him in that vicinity in Studio City in Hollywood Hills. There were a lot of like movie producers or set people or secondary actors or actresses that would be in movies. And I did have a handful, but certainly nobody that was that huge.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's pretty huge.
yeah, it was quite an experience.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
how many days were you there each week?
So I would go to his house anywhere between 2 and 3 days a week.
Okay.
Some weeks maybe only once, some weeks twice, but it was definitely every week
Mm.
for that time frame. I would drive up into Coldwater Canyon. That's where he lived, up in the Hollywood Hills. It's Studio City, and wind my way up the canyon. Beautiful area, very pretty. There's tons and tons of movie stars that live up in that vicinity.
Mm.
And the homes are just, incredibly gorgeous. And of course, his home was gated.
Yep.
So I had to buzz the gate when I came up there, and the gate would open, and I would drive up this beautiful driveway and pull right up to his garage. And uh, most of the time he would be right there to greet me. He'd come out to the garage, especially the first day,
Yeah.
because I really wasn't quite certain, where I was going and how I was getting up there. I had the Google, I had the map on my phone, so I knew where to go. But once I got to the actual house, I was like, so do I just like pull in your driveway, or, how am I doing this? And he goes, just buzz the gate, drive up, and I'll be right there.
Yep.
Sure enough, he was there waiting for me, nervous Nelly. And I just was like, I just kept telling myself, you've got to calm down. You have to just go in and be professional, and you cannot talk. You cannot mention Eddie Van Halen, the band. You cannot talk about that. This is not why you're here. So
Yeah.
I never did until the very last day when it was over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talking about that first experience though, when you first met him, how was
Hmm.
that? Like, was it just out of this world?
Yeah, he's so very nice gentleman. When I called him on the phone to let him know that I was going to be his home care nurse and I was going to be coming up to see him, um, he was just like a gentleman. He's like, you got to call me Ed. He always had me call him Ed. And he was like very casual when whenever I went there, especially the first day, he was just like a normal person. He just came out to my car, opened the door, said, come on in. We would always sit in his kitchen, and I got to hold Cody a lot, his little
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
He was always holding Cody pretty much all the time when I was there. Cody was either on the kitchen countertop or in Eddie's arms, and a couple times I was holding Cody, cutest little dog.
Yeah.
But he was just really casual. A lot of times Eddie was on the phone, talking to people. There was a buzz of energy around the house. There was always people coming and going. There was always people working on his cars, people in the garden. It just seemed like a very high energy, exciting place to be. And he wanted to get down to business. We had to do our thing, do what I had to do. And usually I wasn't there very long, maybe 30 minutes each time.
Okay.
He always seemed very busy, and there was a lot of things going on. But for the most part, it was, he made it really easy. I mean, I went into it as a professional person, and never really during that time I was there, my focus was caring for him. doing what I needed to do medically, and never really blinked an eye that I was sitting across from Eddie Van Halen. I just got into a different mode when I went in there, and he was very kind all the time, very thankful for everything I did, very appreciative of everything, and just a super super nice person.
Mm. So did you ever have the guitars or playing the guitars while you were there?
I did not go into the studio. I drove by the studio every time because it was right there. I did not see him playing, or I didn't ask him to play, but there was a room when I walked in the house. I walked in through the garage. The garage doors were always open for me. So I walked in through a garage entrance. When I went into the house, I had to pass a few rooms to get to the kitchen where he was always sitting and waiting for me. The rooms that I passed, there was one room to the right that was loaded with guitars. And I would just kind of look in there and I would just go by the room and take a quick peek and just keep walking. I'm assuming they were some of his favorites, or, when he played in the house, I don't know, but I never went in the studio. I did see it. It was kind of up on the hill across the street from the garage, and would have been great to see it, but I never did.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's probably the only, half hour of his day without a guitar, by the sounds of things.
Probably, probably, but it was kind of neat to see, just to look in there and see the guitars, and it was crazy.
Yeah. So I guess, you would have spent a lot of time with him. Going over those 2-3 months, half hour,
Mm-hmm.
2 times a week. So you would get to know him personally as well as a person.
I would say we didn't do a lot of like chit chatting about other things. Although he did ask me, a few times, we talked about where I was from and what are you doing out here in LA? And because he knew I was a travel nurse, and he's like, what are you doing in LA? And we talk about my son living in Los Angeles and my travel experiences. And he knew I was from Michigan, and he talked a couple times about touring in Michigan. And he's like, oh yeah, I've been to Michigan a few times. And in fact, on the very last day, when I discharged him from home care, he said to me, I'm hoping to tour again. And he said, and if I do, we'll definitely probably get to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'll hook you up with some tickets. Wow. And I was like, that would be fantastic. So I had his phone number. He had my phone number. We did a lot of texting back and forth, because it would be setting up my appointments with him, and just chit chatting. And he said to me on that last day, I've got your number, and if I tour again and get to Michigan, I'll text you and get you hooked up with some tickets. So unfortunately, he never did tour again, which is really sad. But we didn't talk about a lot of personal things. I did meet Janie, his wife, and she was just kind as ever. And again, high energy. She was always buzzing around. I believe she's involved in a lot of like theatrical performances and dancing. And it's like she was always buzzing in and out doing something, but always super friendly, and just really kind. And that was the only family member that I met. Yeah. And there was just a lot of other people. I'm assuming they were his, employees working around the house.
Yeah. So I guess about that time, Wolfgang would have been recording his album, or pretty busy doing that as well, I'd say.
Yeah. I'm thinking that was about the time frame. I never did meet him. Like I said, Eddie was on the phone all the time, probably talking to a lot of family members when I was there doing what I had to do. Yeah. So that was kind of cool. He did have it was kind of strange how I got the job, because he did have a private nurse.
Oh, okay.
But the private nurse who I met one time was actually on vacation when Eddie needed some extra medical care. So if the nurse hadn't have been on vacation, I would have never been out there to take care of him.
Oh, wow.
But his private nurse, who I met, did that specifically with a lot of different high profile people. He was like strictly working in that Hollywood area and was like a private nurse to a lot of the famous people, but he was gone. So when I took over the position, I think Eddie just decided, well, since you're already here, you're with Providence Hospital, you might as well finish up doing what you're doing. Even though his private nurse had came back from vacation, he could have probably just ended our services with the hospital, but he just continued until we were finished with everything that I needed to do.
Okay. Yeah. So did he ever like call you for other things to come up to the house to do, or was it like a set schedule that you had?
Well, that's kind of funny because it really was a set schedule, and that's usually how home care works.
Yeah.
Is that you plan your schedule, and you plan on seeing a patient so many days per week for whatever needs are. Okay, for instance, a lot of times I would draw blood on people and take their blood to the lab. There was just different things that you do in home care.
Yep.
But he did call me a few times, and I wasn't scheduled to see him. And he would call me and say, hey, can you come on up here? The doctor wants this, or the doctor wants that. And normally I probably would have said, I can't. I'm on a strict schedule. I've got like 6 other people to see, and I'd be running all around Los Angeles. And I'll tell you what, the traffic in Los Angeles was crazy. And 9 times out of 10, I would actually take an Uber to my patients because I didn't want to deal with driving 7 lanes on the freeway. Yeah. So I would actually have a backpack and my laptop, and I would walk and get an Uber, take it to the house that I was going to, and grab another Uber. But when I saw him, fortunately, my son had an extra vehicle, and he's like, go ahead and use it, Mom. You're driving up into the canyon. You're going way up there. I don't want you Ubering up there. And honestly, I didn't really want to Uber to Eddie Van Halen's house. I thought that would be a little sketchy. So I decided I'll use his car. So there were a few times where Eddie would call and say, hey, Marianne, can you come on up? Like, the doctor just called me and needs some blood work done. And I would immediately reschedule everybody else and go, yep, I'll be there. No problem. I'm on my way. Give me 10 minutes and I'll be up there. So I did make accommodations, and I would always, it only happened a few times where he needed something that wasn't on my normal schedule with him.
Okay.
But yeah, I would most definitely accommodate it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about your son? Was your son a fan as well?
Pardon me?
Was your son a Van Halen fan?
Well, he's a lot younger than me. So he likes Van Halen. He's 30, I'm 58. So there's a big gap there in the music, in the era of what was popular, but definitely, he knows Eddie Van Halen. I think he about flipped when I told him, that where I was going, and that was one of my patients. It was kind of crazy, and I really couldn't, because of HIPAA violations. You really can't, you can't go around saying, this is my patient, this is who I have, this is who I have. So I maintained pretty much through that whole entire time. I just didn't, I didn't tell people when it was finished. And when we completed our last visit, I told my kids, I said, I'm going to get a picture one way or another. I said, and they're like, you can't do that, Mom. You cannot do that. I said, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to have this assignment and go the whole entire career and have one of the most iconic patients and not get a picture. So I finished up everything I needed to do on that day that we were discharging, and I got my paperwork signed. I completed everything. I told him, we're done, we're good to go. I'm going to give, report back to your doctor. And he said, that's great. And I said, how, were you happy with the services? And he said, yeah, you were fabulous. Your hospital was great. And so I closed my computer down, I shut my laptop, completed everything, and I was packing up my gear. And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, okay, now that it's over, I said, I am a huge fan of yours. And I said, do you mind if we get a picture? And he said, I really wondered when you were going to ask me that.
Oh,
And
really?
I said, I couldn't really ask you that. And then it was like, we kind of laughed. And I think it was like a housekeeper or somebody snapped the picture of us. I took a couple pictures and shook his hand. And I just told him it was a pleasure. And he, said, thank you. And he's like, I definitely will get a hold of you if I'm touring. And then off I went. And then at that point, I think I pretty much told my family and my friends, your guys are not going to believe who I had the pleasure to take care of for a few months.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So it really wasn't until that last day that he knew that you knew of him.
Yeah. So I told him, and he said, I kind of figured, but we didn't really talk about that kind of, we just never really talked about it. I never really mentioned, what songs I really liked, or that, I grew up in the 80s and was a huge fan. I never did see him in concert though. I've never seen a Van Halen concert. But the music, we always listened to that music back in the 80s.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, was there any other interaction with Eddie, or that was pretty much it after
Nope, that was it. That was the end. I actually I left Los Angeles in December and finished my travel nursing assignment and came back home. And I've stopped traveling for that length of time. I still travel up to the state of Alaska for a couple weeks out of the year. I kept my contract there because I really love that state, and I love Alaska and the people that I care for up there. So I decided to sign a contract with them where every year I travel up there for about 2 weeks, but I have a full-time job in Michigan. So I never did travel again out to Los Angeles. My son now lives in New York City, so I don't know if I'll get back to LA. If he ever moves back there, I'm sure that I'll go back someday and maybe drive up on Coldwater Canyon and pass the house, and reminisce about those days. But yeah, I never had any contact with him. I followed all the Facebook pages, and there's a lot of Eddie Van Halen groups, and I would always be on there watching things. And yeah, sadly, I watched the progression, how he, it seems like whenever I saw like an Instagram or a video posting or something, he just seemed to decline. I could tell from a medical standpoint, as a nurse, I saw the decline, and it was just sad because I was like, I just don't think he's pulling out of this. I don't think he's pulling out of the cancer. And it just was like a slow progression that I saw from afar as a nurse. And he just didn't seem like he got the energy back and got back what I think he was hoping to get back.
But the time you're there with him, like, was he pretty much up and about? Like, are you looking fit?
Oh yeah, he was up and about. He was actually traveling to Germany for a few weeks. Like, I don't know if it was every month or I don't know if it was every other month, but he was actually traveling to Germany. At the time, there was a progressive treatment for the kind of cancer he had, and he would travel there to get the treatment and then come back to the United States. He seemed pretty active to me. He seemed in good shape and in good health, and moving around, and just, I think at that time, the treatment, I think there were hopes that it was going to put the cancer into a complete remission. And it might have, I don't know, honestly. If it did go into remission, obviously it came back in another form, which I think eventually took his life at the very end.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of people know about what happened towards the end, and like going over to Germany, and then the whole pandemic hit, and
yeah. And I believe from what I've read, I think that the cancer eventually went to his brain, and I knew he was hospitalized for some time at the very end. My understanding is that his wife Janie was by his side, and his son Wolfie, and I think even Valerie, his ex-wife, were by his side when he passed away.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still can't forget that day when I found out. You know, because everyone knew that I was a big Van Halen fan and grew up on Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's just calling me. Did you hear the news? Like, you know, I was in tears
Where,
for 2 days.
where were you when you heard the news?
I was just woke up. I was in bed. My wife actually came in and said, because I think we had got a family line where we all talk to each other, and I think my brother might have posted it, and I opened up and had a look, and yeah, just cried. And then I
Yeah,
took my kids to school, and on the way home they were playing. I think it might have been Jump on the radio, and then I just I was a mess.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What's really sad is that for me, I've been a nurse for a long time, and I've had a lot of patients that have had cancer.
Mm.
I've worked actually for hospice as well, and I've seen just a lot of different types of cancer. And I have a really good understanding just from treating patients and in the medical field that it is a beast, and cancer is just one of those things that it's like lingering in the background, and you just never know if it's going to completely go away or if it's going to eventually come back in another shape or form. And in my mind, there's so many people that I've taken care of that have had cancer that I find out 2 years later, and especially up in Alaska,
Yeah.
many of the patients up there choose an alternative treatment method. So they're not into the standard chemotherapy or regular treatment. They choose something alternative, and that cancer just comes back, and
Yeah.
it gets them one way or another. And it's very sad. And,
Yeah.
in my mind, I was always in the back of my mind, I wondered, because he had several different forms of it.
Mm.
And it just creeped its way into another place, and I thought, gosh, I really hope that for once and for all, the treatment that he was going through was going to completely get rid of it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I just didn't have that feeling. I just didn't have that gut feeling that it would be wiped out forever, but I think he had good years. He had good years where it was in remission and it was gone completely.
Yeah.
And then, boom, it would just eventually come back.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely left a huge legacy behind. I mean,
Yeah.
look on the internet now. There's so many like different YouTube channels all about Eddie, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm part of a few of those, and it's just amazing. And you can see by the guitars and everything.
I know. I see all that. So what's your favorite song to play when you play one of your guitars?
Yeah, but my new one here actually got made last year from a guy called Neil Daly in America. He
Okay.
he like does the replicas of the Van Halen guitars.
Okay. Wow.
So he actually made this one up to my specifications, and it's amazing. It's my favorite guitar ever. It's incredible.
That's crazy. Yeah, you've got quite a collection there.
Yeah.
What song is your favorite song to play when you think of Eddie?
Or to play.
Yeah, to play.
Yeah. I mean, to actually play on guitar, probably. I mean, I love the full bug, and I mean, we used to play Panama in our band.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
All those ones, Hot for Teacher.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't play it as well as him, but I try.
Right. That's great. I was just thinking about this podcast and Eddie. Earlier today I turned my YouTube channel on, and I was just, randomly looking at some old performances, and I came across when he played in front of the Jimmy Kimmel studio in 2015.
Yeah.
that's right on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
So that is, I would walk by the Jimmy Kimmel studio and walk right down Hollywood Boulevard, like almost every day. I had a little dog at the time,
Mm.
and I would always just walk on Hollywood Boulevard. And I came across that video of them performing in front of the Jimmy Kimmel studio. And then he also performed at the Hollywood Bowl. I think it was maybe 2015. And I've been to the Hollywood Bowl as well to see other performances. So yeah, it was just really cool to be in that Hollywood area. And he just, I think he just was out and about a lot, because I've seen a lot of pictures, and
Yeah.
just him out shopping and at a coffee shop, and with Janie, they'd be walking around. So because he lived there for so long
Yeah.
in Studio City.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I don't really even know if anyone's like living at the house. I don't know if Janie still lives there, or I think you had mentioned that that Wolfgang was recording at
Yeah.
5150.
Yeah. So he's back there now recording his second album.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It sure was a beautiful home, and I do know that he married Janie on the property of that home.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is gorgeous. Yeah, really gorgeous home.
Yeah.
But they all are. I mean, they're all huge mansions up there. So yeah.
So you got to see all these cars as well. So I could take it going through that
A
garage.
few of them. Yeah, I can't recall the types, but I can tell you that there was a collection, and there was always somebody working on the cars.
Yeah.
There was always somebody doing something to the cars. But yeah.
Yeah, I've actually got a little photo here. Let me see if I can share it. This is Eddie in two of his cars.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing cars like that. The ones I
Okay.
saw in the garage were little tiny sports cars,
Okay.
little miniature sporty cars. I wouldn't even know the types that they were.
Yeah.
But he did have quite a collection of cars, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool. No,
Yeah.
but overall, yeah, just like a fantastic person, and everything you hear about Eddie, is just always smiling.
Yeah, he was always smiling. He definitely smiled. He had an interesting sense of humor, and it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe. He wasn't shy, and he liked to talk. There was always chitter chatter and different people in and out. And like I said, he was always on the phone. I thought, he's a busy guy, because he was always talking to somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
And I would be trying to do my stuff and talk to him, and he'd be making appointments or doing whatever he was doing. So I'm sure he was a really busy guy.
Yeah. So you never heard anything about the tour that was hopefully coming up?
I did not. No, he just said, we're hoping to tour again.
Yeah.
I really don't even know when that was supposed to happen. I don't know if it was like 2019, but then you're right, the pandemic hit after that. So I don't even know if they had any plans, really, anything concrete where they were going to tour again.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about that?
I mean, there's all talk about the kitchen sink tour where they're going to try and get everyone back and do this.
Yeah.
But I don't know how far they got or what the situation was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he was referring to when he talked about the touring again. And I think it was in the making. I think they had just started talking about it in hopes that it would happen. But yeah, it unfortunately never did.
Yeah. But I mean, Wolfgang's just is an amazing talent. So to leave that behind, and
I know.
he was just on that Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins tribute show where he played. I don't know if did you see that one?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he played Hoffa Teacher in Panama.
Oh, he did. Wow. That's great.
Note for note. It was like incredible.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, obviously that talent was passed down to him. I mean, obviously when you see him play, and he played quite a bit with the band, I think, in the last few years.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that he's carrying that legacy on, and I just know from everything I read, it was really hard for him. I mean, he struggled to go on. That was just really, really tough. But he's obviously carrying that legacy on and performing some of those great songs and creating new songs. So that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's great. But I'm definitely jealous of your time spending with Eddie. But but thank you for sharing it with us. It's really, really appreciated.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a part of my career. It's like I said, probably the most iconic 3 months that I had in my career, and I truly treasure it. And I hope that I made a difference in his life. And I feel like at that time when I was there, um, I do feel like I was helping him as medically, coming from a medical standpoint. And I think he was like really appreciative of all of that with what we did for him.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, thank you again, very much for.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, you're
Let
welcome.
me know when the podcast comes out.
Yes, I will. I'll stop the video
Okay.
now, and then I'll just quickly say goodbye.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, bye bye.